Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends. Episode 105. That's a 105 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I'm Gary, and I got my co-host, my partner in crime, my choking fanatic, my armbar machine, Byron Jabara with me. How are you, Byron?
Gary, I'm doing great. That's quite the introduction. I'm not used to that sort of thing.
Yeah, but, you deserve it, though. So thought I'd give you an extra shout-out.
Give me some extra credentials, I see.
Yep. Man, we have a great episode today. As we told you last week, part 1 of 2 of an interview with Jonathan Thomas, Alliance Black Belt. The guy is just phenomenal, and he's going to give us some great tips on conditioning. So do not miss it. I guarantee you'll learn a lot and make your jiu-jitsu better.
He's traveling. He's been traveling for quite a while, and he ended up in a place where the jiu-jitsu wasn't so good. And he spent his time learning about conditioning and actually conditioning himself. I mean, he's already a high caliber athlete in jiu-jitsu, but he didn't just sit there and fall apart when he couldn't get quality training partners. He decided to learn about something else and increase his jiu-jitsu that way. He learned about his conditioning. He learned about increasing his baseline aerobic conditioning. That'll be a big topic of today, and how that's helped change what he's able to do. And it's he thinks it's going to be like the next level for him. So that's really cool. And we also talk about the differences in playing a guard game and playing a passing guard game and how much different they really are. He's got a lot of cool ideas that I think you'll find interesting.
So don't tune out. Stay tuned. Check that out. Hey, especially since you don't tune out, you don't ever want to miss an episode, you need to get on our email list. Our email list, we will alert you, send you an email every Tuesday to let you know there's a new show. And so you don't want to miss it. We have a link on our page. So just get in there, give us your name, email address. We don't sell it, so don't think anything's crazy like that. But we just want to get our podcast out to you each and every week. So definitely check that out.
Yep, that's good. And if you want to support the BJJ Brick Podcast and what we're doing here, you could help keep us on the mats and on the air by supporting us with our audiobook that we have. It's called Your First Year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu audiobook. It's really just a little audio podcast. It's about 2.5 hours long with yours truly talking about walking you through or choking you through what's going to happen your first year. Everything from Chapter 1, finding the right gym for you, all the way to Chapter 6, tournaments. And I'm not pushing anybody to do tournaments their first year, but if you're interested, and a lot of people are, I'll give you some advice about doing your first tournament or doing tournaments within your first year. So it's $11.99. You can find it on our website. You can find it in the show notes for this podcast episode. And that goes to support us and help us keep us on the air.
And speaking of ebooks, Byron's going to talk about mine a little bit later on in the show, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, this one will be a smash hit, and I'm sure that it will go as viral as an ebook can go, Gary. So at the end of the episode, you're going to share us what you got in the. I'll share with you the title, and you're going to share with me a little bit of the content. That's how it seems to go.
Can't wait.
Well, last week we had a really cool interview with Allison Tremblay, and she was kind enough to give us a quote for this week. So without any further ado, we have our quote of the week from Allison.
There's this quote by Neil Gaiman, and I posted it on my Facebook right before ADCC when I was outside Gabby, but I'm going to probably paraphrase it quite a bit. But it's something like, fairy tales are important not because they teach us that dragons exist, but they tell us that dragons can be beaten. And I really liked that, and I kind of really identified with that quote before I matched ADCC with Gabby. But for me, quotes are like a huge source of motivation. I love those positive quotes about just kind of believing in yourself and achieving things and stuff like that. So I'm always like on the internet reading motivational quotes or listening to like athletes talk or watching those motivational videos on YouTube and stuff like that.
What was that one more time about the dragons?
Yeah, so it was, like I said, I'm probably paraphrasing it, but it's, fairy tales are important not because they teach us that dragons exist, but because they teach us that dragons can be beaten.
Wow, I like that. I've never heard that one.
I really like that one too. It's one of my favorites for sure.
And I think it's relatable. We all have, we don't all face Gabby Garcia. But there's always somebody who is like, I can't, this person, there's no way I'm going to, they're too much, And
yeah, but you have your, like your personal demon, your dragons inside of you too, right? And ignoring them isn't the way to kind of overcome them. It's realizing that they're there, but then, knowing that they can be beaten or that you can kind of overcome them.
Love it. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good one for sure.
Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. So I think she did it, I relate it to having somebody that looks like an impossible opponent or something like that, but she kind of brought it into the fact that we all have things like in our lives, even within ourselves, that we think we can't get around. And it's important to face those things, and they can be beaten. Not to ignore things that bother you or maybe some aspect of yourself that you don't like, that this dragon can be beaten if you face it.
Yes, definitely. What I also like that she talked about was she loves reading quotes, positive quotes. And I don't know, I just think the more you read positive quotes, the more you're going to be in a good frame of mind each and every day, on or off the mat. So I thought that was kind of neat when she was just talking about that she really likes to read those. Yeah.
That's a good way to keep some positive things in your life, I would say. And I think that's part of what we try to do on having our quote of the week. Not all our quotes are positive, and most of them I think are, but some of them are just like reflective and educational maybe, and just kind of make you think about something differently. But like this one, you've got, everyone has to face certain dragons in their lives. And
we've got our own demons. We've got to face it. It can be beaten. We can overcome it.
Yeah, and when you I don't know if you read or watch a fairy tale, however it unfolds, but they'll find a way. They find a way to beat these dragons or bad things in their lives, and look to do the same. Be the author of your own story, Gary. Right?
Man, that is great. It's like we said last week. The pen is mightier than the sword.
That's true.
Yep.
The pen is mightier than the sword.
That is true.
And if you say pen and is, kind of, kind of sounds funny.
I see what you did there, Byron.
I try. My jokes are so lame, nobody even gets them. Hey.
I got it.
While we're on the topic of my lame joke, the interview is a little bit explicit, so there'll be a little bit of adult language. If you're at work, you might want to find a time to listen to it, or put some headphones in, or if you got kids around during the interview portion of the show, you might kind of, pick a time where there are less little ones around. So just a heads up on the actual interview before we get started on that. But we got some other stuff to handle before that, so that'll be coming up shortly.
Yep, I think we should get to Article of the Week. How about that, Byron?
That's a good idea, Gary. What do we have this week?
This week we have 8 steps to finding the perfect BJJ gi. And this is from jujitsubrotherhood.com. We'll put a link in the show notes to it. The author of the article is Brendan Hufford. But this is a big thing today is trying to find the perfect gi. There's so many gis out there. I remember back in the day when we first started, we didn't have the choices that they do today. And this is a kind of neat article, 8 steps to find the perfect gi, which we could all use.
Yeah, and I like that the title, 8 steps to find the perfect gi. And then about a third paragraph or so, first, we have to come to the understanding, there is no perfect BJJ gi.
Well, not one such perfect gi. There might be a perfect gi for a certain person.
That's true.
Because, really everybody's shaped differently. Like, Byron's in shape. Me, I'm the shape of a pear. So we've got little different shapes right there. So it's what fits Byron may not fit me.
Yeah, you might ask a teammate, how's that gi fit? And he could say it fits amazing. It's the perfect fitting gi. It's the right length of sleeves. It does not perfect amount of room, in the jacket. and the pants are a great fit, and you can get the same gi and it can fit terrible. I mean, you just have to.
Yep.
Almost the best way to get a fitting gi is to try on some teammates before class. I recommend it's before class, not after.
Or while you're rolling with them, after you've tapped them out or choked them unconscious, take their gi off and try it on. That always works good too.
And then when they wake up without their clothes on, it's really confusing.
Yeah, or what's even better is put their gi pants back on but backwards. That'll really confuse them.
But he's got 8 steps that are different than our 2 steps.
Yep, yeah. I didn't want to dance with you, Byron, so let's don't talk about 2 steps. But number 1, cut or the fit. And in Brendan's opinion, the cut and fit of the gi is the most essential part of enjoying wearing it. Some gis may be too tight in the crotch, too short in the sleeves. Some people like slim, some people like baggy, longer, shorter cuts. So you have to find what you like, how it fits. So like Byron said, you need to try it on and see what works best for you. And one point he takes, don't just buy the gi, check the reviews. There's us jiu-jitsu guys, we're great at reviewing stuff and letting other people know. Read the reviews and recommendations. Take those seriously. And I like what he says. No matter how cool it looks, if it doesn't fit, you won't want to wear it. So definitely do some research.
Yeah, if the gi does not fit, you must have quit. The step number 2 on his list here is design. And he is, I think, based on the article, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes, he's big on the design of his gi, how it looks, the kind of the style and the personality he's able to show while he's wearing his gi. That may affect you, or that may not really matter to you. You may not care what your gi looks like so much, but that's okay. I mean, if you are extra motivated to train today because you have a fancy gi and you like the way it looks, put that gi on and go train a little bit harder. If you care less about your gi, save your money and get a more plain, simple gi. But you got to ask yourself, I'll ask Gary, how many pieces of flare should I have on my gi? Is there a number?
Well, when I used to work at this restaurant, we used to have 15 pieces of flare. But, that was the overachievers would put all that flare on. But you do not have to have that many. Some like 0, some like 99. So it's whatever you like.
But if I do the minimum 15, is that okay or is it frowned upon?
It's frowned upon. You need to go above and beyond.
So if you have,
like this.
Yeah.
Or go ahead, Byron.
I was going to say,
go right ahead.
If you haven't seen the movie Office Space, you got to check it out. That's a classic. That's where we're coming from.
And if you don't like the design, you must resign.
Man.
Number 3, I just had to go after your. If it doesn't fit, you must quit. So you got to come up with one for number 3 here, which is the company. He said that this doesn't really matter to a lot of people, but to him, it's very, very crucial. He wants a company that gives back to the sports, that has great owners that really care about jiu-jitsu. He talked about how most jiu-jitsu gi companies, you can email their president and get a reply back quickly. And he's like, would you get that at Nike? No, you probably wouldn't. But he also likes to see, follow their social media and see how they do they sponsor athletes, do they do charities, tournaments they support. Basically, he wants them to give back to the sport. And if they hold the same values as you do, it's definitely worth considering.
The company it can be a huge deal. How ethical you want your company to be, if that's a big factor for you, that can be big. But the idea that you can contact the owner or somebody high up, that's really nice.
That's huge.
An off story here. My wife and I ordered some bar stools from a company online. So they said it would be 6 weeks. 6 weeks go by nothing. 8 weeks go by nothing. I call them and I get nothing. I send an email. I get no reply. It's been almost 3 months now, and we can't figure out if this company's even real. So I call my credit card companies and I make sure that they never did charge me for it. It's just nothing happened. So we waited for two or 3 months anticipating our bar stools to come in, and nothing happened. Like a simple phone call would have told me that these people are not in business anymore, well ahead of time. And I think that it's so nice when you could call a company and somebody answers the phone, or you leave a message and they call you back, that day or the next. Like, That's such a nice
You put a message on their Facebook, they get right on it. Companies like that's who you want to do business with.
Yeah. And Gary, I'm trying to think of a clever rhyme with our company, but
I don't think there's one.
You're stumping me. That's as close
Yep,
as
hey, I win. No biggie. Yep.
So number 4 is comfort, which this could be big for some people. And you're going to look at the different types of weaves and even how you care for this gi. I don't dry my gi, so they sit there and they hang dry and they're real stiff. So for the first 10 minutes I'm wearing it, it's not a very comfortable thing, but it'll loosen up, get the sweat going. So comfort might be a big thing, and you can definitely find information about that in the reviews you read online.
Yeah. Number 5, durability. Some people like the heavier gi. Some people like a lighter gi. Normally a lighter gi won't last as long, but it's lighter. It's not as heavy. But, both gis have their pros and cons. It depends on what you want. Are you going to have to weigh in with your gi on? You're probably going to want a lightweight gi. But if not, if you want something that's going to last for years and years, you're probably going to get a more durable gi, a double weave. So it's depending on what you want. You definitely want to take into account the durability when you're looking to shop.
And to me, durability, definitely the thickness of the gi is a factor, but the stitching could be a thing too, because if you have the thickest gi in the world and it's coming unstitched, or the collar's just starting to fray and give way, the gi could still be in great shape, but it's ripping. That's the stitching's coming apart. That's not. That's a factor too. It's not just about the weave. So you'll pick that up in your reviews, and you could look for the information about the stitching as well. Number 6 is rarity. Do you want something that's unique or one of a kind or near one of a kind? Some gis really specialize in making. We're only going to make so many of this gi. You get it while you can, and so if that's important to you, keep that in mind.
Yep, like Byron said, rarity makes parity in gis. So check that out. Number 7. Availability. And this is the big thing now. You're seeing special orders on gis. They're only making a certain amount. A lot of times you need a gi, you need it now. Do you have to pre-order it? Or are you going to have to wait weeks for it? Do you have to get on a list? Or is your gi in stock? And the cool thing now is with these big companies, you can almost always find a gi in stock. So if you need it right away, some of these gis you probably don't want to wait the 8 hours for the pre-order to arrive. Or 8 weeks, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Gary, number 8 here, I'm a material girl living in a material world. So number 8 is material. And there's a lot of value in the article in this number 8 alone. He really breaks down the pearl weave, gold weave, single weave, double weave, all these magical different weaves and ripstop and things. A lot of information right here, especially if you're new into buying a gi, that this article will provide for you. But just kind of learn a little bit about each one. And you can also call the company and say, which do you recommend? This is where I'm training. This is the type of training I anticipate doing. And they'll be able to help you out with that. But there's a ton of information about material or the type of weave that the gi will be made.
Yep, yeah, like Byron said, that could be the article itself right there, as talks about the different weaves there. But also, too, Brendan, the author of the article, you can check out his website, okkimonos.com. He's also got a blog on there. So if you have questions, basically he said message them, and they'll get back with you. So kind of neat. Yeah,
it's a fun article, and it's like, for me, once I get a gi, I've got it. I don't worry about gi, and I'm not in the gi market until I need to get a new one. I've always had the same system, not always, but I have a black gi, a blue gi, and a white gi, and whichever laundry pile is biggest, that's the color of gi I grab, and then when I get home, I do that laundry, and it's been working for me. And so if my black gi rips or is getting too old, I'm going to be in the market for a new black gi. And this style is it could be fun, but I've never really been huge into getting a real fancy gi. I've just got 3 fairly simple gis, but I'm more about the quality, I think, and I think it's hard to. I don't know. I don't know how. I've never really had a bad gi that I would. Have you had a bad gi, Gary?
No, I haven't. I've had some great gis, simple gis, but that's what I like. But hey, while we're talking about gis, normally this isn't where we added in, but hey, if you want a gi patch, a BJJ brick gi patch, just go on to iTunes, give us a review. We like funny reviews. Let us know how we're doing. And send us an email to let us know that was you, so we can get you out the gi patch, bjjbrick@gmail.com, or on our Facebook page. And if you live in the United States, we'll send you a free gi patch. So that will also help with number 2 there, the design. It'll give you a little bit of flair. So we would appreciate it.
Cool. That's Gary. I think that we're getting close to blue belt level here. Our smoothness with our odd transitions is getting a little bit better. So,
well, personally, I would give you a stripe on your blue. If it doesn't fit, you must have quit. I thought that was pretty good. So, definitely, you're getting a stripe to your belt on that one.
Well, thank you, Gary. And if I could give you a stripe, I'd give you several for all what you've done today. And you also went up to me, and I wasn't able to come up with any sort of a rhyming joke for the word company. So,
well, I have to say, like the whole time you were like talking about your part of the article, I was going up with trying to figure what rhymes with it in my head. So I cheated a little.
Well, I tried doing that too, and I came up with nothing. So that's good. As promised, we do have a outstanding interview with our friend Jonathan Thomas. We interviewed him back. I say the episode number. I know it's in the 30s, but I'll say it during the interview. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to that too. You know, obviously listen to this one first because you already got it going. But he shared a lot of cool ideas and some thoughts in there. And Jonathan is just somebody who likes to break things down and to learn about the world around him, which is a lot of jiu-jitsu. And so just a fascinating guy that is sharing, is sitting down with you and giving you some coaching advice for the time that he's with us today and also next week. So it's a great opportunity for me and hopefully for the audience here to learn a little bit more about jiu-jitsu. So we'll go ahead and air the interview. Here we go. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
His rear naked choke is so potent that opponents have been known to disrobe upon contact. When he was a kid, he would always compete in the adult division. Now that he is an adult, he is considering making a run at the kids title. He signed up for a sumo wrestling match. The group Salt and Pepper showed up without warning to sing their song, Push It. He not only pushed it, he pushed it real good.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Jonathan Thomas back to the BJJ Brick podcast. Jonathan, welcome back to the podcast. It's been since episode 32. You've been a busy guy, and we're excited to hear from you and hear what's going on.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's really cool to be back. Since the last interview, I had a lot of people talk to me about the interview and had a lot of positive feedback, and it was a lot of fun, so it's cool to be here.
Yep, when you give great information during the interview, that happens, I guess. It was a lot of fun talking with you. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that's going to happen again today. So
that sounds good.
Last we heard from you, you were in Atlanta and training hard there. That's not quite the same story anymore, is it?
Nope. I'm actually kind of traveling around training right now. I just kind of, got into a situation I think a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are in, which is they're trying to find a way to get the good training, but at the same time you have to financially support yourself. And I think that, unless you have your parents paying for everything, which is certainly true for some guys, but, a lot of us, it's not. You got to find a way to be able to, fund your training. So, training in Atlanta was great for the past 5 years, and I learned a lot and everything. But I kind of came to a point where I felt like I needed to, change up the training partners and also, just try to find a way to support myself better financially. So, was fortunate in my career a few years ago. I made some good contacts in Sweden. And I started teaching seminars in Sweden, so now I'm here teaching and training and trying to save up a little bit of money. And then I'm going to go visit New York and go train with Ryan Hall also for a little bit to work on my 50-50 because I think it's one of my weaker areas. Then maybe visit Marcelo Garcia's or Unity in a little bit and just kind of trying to jump around and get the best training I can get.
So you're in Sweden now. When did you move to Sweden? Or go to Sweden?
So basically, let's see. End of July, I left Atlanta, and then I was with my girlfriend in her hometown, Annecy, France. I was there for a month, spent time with her. And then I got to Sweden, August 31st. And, which, kind of like being in France, actually, I should probably talk about that, kind of, really opened my eyes a little bit to more to like strength and conditioning, because while I was in France, it was really hard to, get a lot of training, just because of like the difficulty of getting to the gyms and like the training times and, just not having a lot of training opportunities. I really kind of try to figure out what it is that I can do to prepare myself best while I don't really have good training. So, I kind of took the time to start reading more about like conditioning and, the best way to prepare yourself physically for, competition. And I felt like I learned a lot in that time.
What changed in your mind about conditioning?
Well, I just kind of like, I always noticed like I've always been very technical. I should say that I've always spent a lot of time focused on technique. That would be my number one priority, and it still is. But something I realized is like, I just got to the point where sometimes I could be training and like I could be technically killing someone and just like killing them in the match, and still sometimes like 2 or 3 rounds in, I'm just exhausted. And even when I found that like even when I would train really hard, like, I train 5-6 times a week, and, I've trained really hard sessions and everything, I would still sometimes just feel like I'm exhausted when I train. And like, I would expect that like, after training so long, my cardio should just be so much better. And like, I just got kind of fed up with it. So I started reading, I kind of started doing more research on like how wrestlers train, because I feel like wrestlers are some of the best conditioned people. So I really started to get more into like taking like a very scientific approach to like my physical conditioning, So one thing I started doing was I started really getting into like trying to build my baseline aerobic conditioning, which I think is something that a lot of jiu-jitsu competitors don't do at all. When you think about cardio for jiu-jitsu, usually the first thing you hear people talk about is high intensity intervals. Like sprints or tabatas and things like that, because that's what you do in a jiu-jitsu match, right? It's like high intensity intervals. But the thing is like your baseline cardio is decided by your base aerobic level. So, it's really important that in the off season you build your baseline or aerobic conditioning. Are you familiar with like the difference between like say your aerobic conditioning and your anaerobic?
Not. Let's just say no. Go ahead and fill me in, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, and I'm in the same boat. You always hear like aerobic, anaerobic, and you would think that like, doing jiu-jitsu full time as a profession, we should be more educated about, conditioning, but I didn't know. So basically aerobic, and I'm by no means like a fitness expert or anything. So this is just kind of my watered down explanation. So I'm sure someone out there will be upset with the things that I'm saying because they're not scientifically perfect, but this is more or less my understanding. Basically aerobic conditioning, it means that your body can support what you're doing with oxygen that you're bringing in. Right. So like if you do long distance running and you keep it at the aerobic level, you should be able to do it without getting tired. Like you should be able to talk the whole time. It's like, for most of us, an aerobic run is like barely more than walking. And anaerobic, means that the intensity level is so much that your body cannot support it with oxygen. So it has to burn, glycogen stores in your muscles, and basically you start to build lactic acid. And that's when you start to exhaust, right? So if you sprint as hard as you can, then you're going to start getting fatigued. If you jog at a really slow pace, you won't get fatigued, right? So that's like my watered down version. So basically, with jiu-jitsu, we're always doing high intensity when you do jiu-jitsu, right? But what's really important is if you do aerobic conditioning, which is like, say, a 30-minute, 40-minute run at a really low intensity, you're going to increase your body's ability at carrying for your red blood cells to carry more oxygen. You're going to increase your lung capacity. You increase the power of your heart to pump oxygen throughout your whole body. So there's so many benefits, and basically it's like it's the deciding factor and how strong your anaerobic conditioning can be. So most people are always focused on doing like high intensity stuff, but in the off season, people really need to be building that base aerobic conditioning. So I have like a heart rate monitor, and I go running and I like monitor my heart rate and stuff. And the first thing that was impressive to me, have you ever run with like a heart rate monitor or anything?
No, I've never monitored I've done some of the cardio machines at gyms and stuff and watched it, but never with actual like a high quality monitor.
Yeah. So, I didn't really understand that stuff before, but then once I figured it out, it like blew my mind. So your max heart rate is supposed to be roughly like 220 minus your age. It's like a rough estimate. So what you'll notice, like if you start running and you wear a heart rate monitor, you won't start like super gassing out until you reach about 85%, right? So if you're running at say 60% of your maximum heart rate, it's barely more than walking, right? So what you'll notice is like if you're someone that doesn't ever really train your aerobic conditioning, if I told you to wear a heart rate monitor and go running, and what would happen is you would start running, and then if I was trying to keep you at your aerobic level, you would be barely more than walking, and then I'd be like, slow down, you're going too fast. Because you're going too hard. You're starting to go into the point where you're going into anaerobic. That's when you start getting exhausted, right? So what's mind-blowing is that when you see someone who's actually in really good condition, basically they can be going what to you would almost be like a full sprint, but their heart rate is at the same level as yours is when you're like barely more than walking. And what that means is that basically each pump of their heart does so much more for filling their body with oxygen and supplying everything their body needs with one pump of the heart than yours does, right? So basically it's like, if you have like a souped up supercar, right? And then like, some, not very good car, the not very good car is going to have to be like completely maxed out to go, to accelerate very quick. Meanwhile, if you have like a really high end Porsche, you can like barely tap the accelerator and you're already like going super fast, right? So the point is, if you max out your aerobic conditioning level, you can push a very high intensity without it even affecting your heart rate that much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and when you bump up that baseline, it's easier for you to not have to. You don't have to like briskly walk to get there. You're gonna start doing the lighter jog and start to do actual jog, and then
you'll get to a point where like you can basically recover while doing a pretty good run. Right. So like, you can recover very fast, right? So your recovery from not only wall fighting, but after training in general, your recovery just goes up drastically. So you recover faster, and everything. So, but the thing about aerobic, conditioning is the same thing as strength training. It takes years to develop, you can develop it over years, right? So like it's something that like if you're like you foresee your future in jiu-jitsu being 5 more years, if you start right now doing aerobic conditioning in the off season, by 3 or 4 years in, your conditioning is going to be so much higher than everyone else. That anaerobic high intensity stuff is stuff that you save for like right before the big competition. But in the off season, you need to be building your aerobic base. The same thing as strength.
Wow.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't do.
I always try to keep things simple for myself. That's how I like them. And I think of like the circulatory system. It's got a pump, it's got pipes, and it's got pudding. When you're your heart, the blood, and the arteries and vessels. What are you changing all those as you get a better baseline, or are you changing mostly your heart, or what's happening there?
Again, I don't want to go too far outside my scope. This is like, I'm not an expert on this. But, from what I have read, when you do your base aerobic running, there's, cardiovascular benefits and then benefits for your lungs. And I think it has multiple positive benefits. It increases like your lung capacity. It increases your red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen. It increases the strength of your heart to pump blood throughout your body, thus getting more oxygen throughout your body. I don't know. I think there's a few other things. But certainly it increases that your resting heart rate, and just overall makes your whole conditioning level much better, right? So then when you're in the tournament season and you start pushing it really hard, basically take two guys. One guy in the off season is doing high intensity intervals, and one guy in the off season is trying to build his aerobic base, right? The guy who does the anaerobic conditioning all off season, he's going to max out his anaerobic conditioning, right? The guy who does his aerobic base is going to keep raising his aerobic base. And then when you both get into the on season and you really start trying to, to get extremely explosive and build the really good anaerobic system, you're going to be able to do it much better. It's just like someone who builds strength in the off season and then in the on season tries to work on being explosive. They're going to be much more explosive in the on season than someone who only tries to build explosion all year round.
It makes sense the way you're explaining it. It sounds like, you have those images in your head of people who are just, oh, that guy's got great cardio, or she could roll forever and not seem to get tired.
Yeah.
And they have higher bases, and especially when you're at a high skill level, you don't need to go 100 miles an hour for the entire match. There's times when it's important to win things, or scrambles, or situations. But if you're able to maintain that steady jog of the aerobic base, I think it's making sense to me. So I think it's making sense to everybody else.
It'll get to the point though where if your aerobic conditioning is good enough, basically someone's steady jog that they're recovering at could be the same intensity level as your insane holy shit mode match. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's what you'll realize is if you go running with someone who's really, a highly conditioned runner, given it's specific for running, but if you go running with someone who's a highly conditioned runner, when you're at the point where your heart rate's getting so high that you're I can't go anymore, they're at a recovery mode at that same pace, right? Because they're in such better condition than you are, right? But that's not because of high intensity intervals. That's because their aerobic base is so much higher.
Okay, makes sense. So what did you found this out, and what did you change in what you do for cardio or conditioning?
Well, what I was doing when I was in France, since I didn't have as much training, is I was doing running. So I would try to do because I wasn't training jiu-jitsu at all. So I was trying to do an aerobic run, 30 to 45 minutes of running with my heart rate monitor on, and try to not go above 75% of my maximum heart rate. And I would stay around there and do it 30, 45 minutes, try to do it 3 days a week. Then 2 to 3 days a week I was doing an anaerobic workout, a high intensity intervals on sprints or circuit training, things like that. And then I was doing that for a while. And that's good because then it builds your anaerobic and your aerobic system. But now, since I got to Sweden, I kind of I've been doing a lot of kind of studying on conditioning, and I realized that really right now the main thing I need to be focusing on is strength and my aerobic conditioning. So I'm really focusing mostly on my strength training now and my aerobic conditioning and my jiu-jitsu technique. Then as I get closer to tournament season, I'll switch the focus. I'll cut out the strength training, switch my focus more to pure jiu-jitsu, and cut the aerobic training and just do basically pure jiu-jitsu. I'm actually not even – I don't even know if you really need to do the high-intensity interval sprints because, it doesn't make sense. You can – if you start reading about exercise science, unless you're using steroids, you can only do so much. You can't do one jiu-jitsu session in a day, do really high intensity. So just super intense workout, right? And then later on – also do a really intense anaerobic Tabata sprint, right? It doesn't make sense. You've already hit that system. You need to allow it to recover. You don't just do it 2 times. It's the same thing. If you want to get stronger, let's say you're doing bench press, for example, right? You can bench press one day, then you have to take a day or 2 off and allow your muscles to recover. They overcompensate and you become a little bit stronger, and then you lift on that day that you're a little bit stronger, and then your muscles get broken down again. You give 2 days for rest, and then you overcompensate again, and then you lift again and you get stronger. So it's like a ladder, right? So if you try to do bench press day 1 and then day 2 you try to do bench press again, and then day 3 you try to do bench press again. Your muscles never have time to recover or improve, and you're not going to get stronger. You're actually going to get weaker. So in theory, you could do bench press every single day and get weaker, not stronger, because you're not giving yourself time to recover. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know a ton about weightlifting, but that's what some of the knowledge that I've gathered is let your body rest and recover. You've mentioned a couple times your heart rate monitor. What kind of a heart rate monitor did you have if someone's interested in kind of seeing where they're at with their baseline?
I just got I was with my girlfriend in France, and so I don't know any of the stores, so I just got one from like a random store in France. It's like nothing fancy. I think pretty much anything will do. You know,
does it go around your chest, or does it go around your? Is it a watch or?
Oh yeah. It goes around, wraps around my chest, and then I got like a watch that like basically is like, I guess, like connected to it somehow with a signal, and then it just tells it. So then while I'm running, I can look at my heart rate anytime I want.
All right. Well, that sounds good, and I'm sure some people out there are going to look into getting that and try to.
Yeah, there's actually a really good article that I read. It's just like what was it called? It's on bodybuilding.com. It was like a cardio for wrestling or something. If you just type cardio for wrestling in, it's like a 3-part series. And it's excellent. I mean, it breaks everything down. I think that you need to know about conditioning. Is awesome. So I would check that out. I wish I remember the name of the article.
Cool.
But if you Google just like cardio for wrestling, it's on bodybuilding.com's website. So just Google cardio for wrestling. It'll probably be the first result.
Yeah, I'll try to find it and put a link to it in the show notes. We're talking a lot about conditioning and a little bit about strength training, but you mentioned before like technique is a huge focus. You could like gain 50% of your strength, or if you're starting a little bit lower, you can maybe double your strength. But like technique, you could times 10 your technique, your ability. There's always ways to get better, and then it just multiplies things. So let's talk a little bit about how your techniques maybe changed, or some of your ideas about training have changed.
So let me think. Yeah, I try to like categorize like the purpose of training. So like, to not to go back into conditioning, but like you need to understand when you're training for technical development and when you're training for building like conditioning and intensity. So for example, when you go into a match, let's say you're going to have a 10-minute match at the gym, right? And you fight someone, and like, it's like, you're trying to win as hard as you can, and they're trying to win as hard as they can. And it's like a war, right? That's not building technique. I mean, you can a little bit, but the point of that training is not to build technique. The point of that training is to push your intensity, push your cardio, and get your mindset right for tournament, right? You don't like, if you want to build technique, you need to be making mistakes, and you need to be like trying things that are like outside the box, right? So it's like you almost need to categorize that. So like, like to me, I try to like separate those. So to me, I like to have most of my training sessions lighter training with the emphasis of trying to develop technique. I do a lot of positional sparring, so I'd say the majority of my training is positional training. So I will try to do like, let's say I want to work on passing a position. So let's say worm guard, right? So I'll have the person start in the worm guard, and then I'll go, okay, go. And then have them spar, and they try to sweep me or submit me from worm guard, and then I try to figure out how to pass it. And when you do it in that environment, it's not like I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to learn. So it drops the ego. And no matter how much people tell you they don't have an ego, people have an ego, right? It's just true. Like it doesn't matter who you'll hear like Hickson, Gracie, and, Salo, and like, Cobrinha. You'll hear all these guys be like, you can't have an ego. The egos doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, when those guys are rolling, I promise you, if you catch them in a triangle in front of the class, they're not going to be happy, right? Everyone's got an ego. It's just true. So the thing is, accept that you have an ego, and then try to find a way to train around it. Because what most people do is they don't find a way to train around it, and then they just don't train because they're afraid of losing. So when you do positional sparring, it's a way for you to drop the ego, right? So if I'm doing positional training and I'm like practicing to Daniel Donahue, right? I'll be working on getting out of his lasso because he's got a really good lasso. So we'll do positional training, and I don't mind trying things and getting caught in an omoplata and getting submitted. right? Because I know we're doing positional training. It's not like my reputation's on the line or any of that stuff I know that's stupid to really have that in your head, but people do, and it's hard to fight it. So the point is, when you do positional training, it's like it gives you a mental, pass on making a mistake and losing, right? Because the point is to learn. So I can start in a position and go, okay, go, and then just try things and mess up a lot. And then if I do that for like an hour, in 1 hour, I'll feel very competent at being in the worm guard from 1 hour of positional sparring. Whereas like if the only time you train is in regular training, then you're going to, you get an hour of sparring, but every time you're in the worm guard, you're just like, you don't have time to look at it, and you're worried about what if I get swept. And you're just trying to avoid even being in the worm guard, maybe, rather than like when you positional spar, the whole point is to be in the worm guard and figure out how to get out.
Yeah, and you probably only have a couple guys in your gym that are really performing that worm guard at a decent level. So you team up with them and you get in their worm guard, and it helps. It sounds like it helps both you and your training partner.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, furthermore, sometimes like, especially if you're training for someone an opponent that does something that no one in your gym does, you have to teach your partners how to do it so that they can do it to you. That's very common for me. I remember when I fought Andrzej Bernovsky. He does that like daily Hevo lasso position. No one in my gym was playing it, so I had to like teach my partners how to do it. And like, just positional spar it a bunch. And then when I actually went into the match, I felt like completely ready and prepared for the position because I had spent so much time in it.
Wow. That's doing your homework and showing up ready, sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I think very often people talk about, you gotta train hard, you gotta want it and stuff like that. But people oftentimes only associate really wanting it and training hard and being tough. They only associate that with physical labor, never with mental labor, right? Because it's just as hard sometimes to come home after a hard day of training and be like, I just want to relax. It's much easier to do that than when you come home to be like, I'm going to sit here with my notebook, write down all my flaws, watch competition footage, and try to find some solutions to these problems. That's equally or more important,
Yeah, well said. You've got some ideas about students learning, getting like a really good guard game and then transitioning to like a top game and trying to play that, and how much different they are. Not just that this is what you're doing, but what you need to learn and what you need to focus on. Kind of bring us up on what your opinions on that.
Everyone has to have a good guard. Like if you don't have a good guard, you're unless you're like a super like judo guy or super wrestler or something. I mean, even then though, if you're like a super judo guy or something, you could take the guy down, pass his guard, be a mount, and then get rolled over, and then you're in guard, then you still have to play guard.
Yeah.
But I just think everyone has to have a good guard. You have to. So usually if you're like a beginner, the first thing you need to do is learn to recompose well, learn to maintain your guard, learn to escape side control. You need to have a really solid baseline defense. That's got to be tight. Once you get your baseline defense like really tight and you have like a good guard that you can really sweep well with, and that can take a long time to develop for sure. Then you really need to start taking on passing. And it's better now than later because you see these guys now who, they're concerned about winning. I mean, I understand it. When you win, it helps. You can do seminars, you build a career off it. But like, they're so concerned with winning at the lower level, that they play in a way that they avoid their flaws, so like they never have to be on top, right? So of course, I mean, and I kind of did that, I guess, when I was coming up too. I like really relied heavily on my guard, to submit people and stuff. And I wouldn't go on top. And because there's plenty of times that if I had gone on top of someone in a tournament, I might have got submitted, but I didn't. I just went to my guard, so I won, but then, eventually I got to like a high level brown belt, won the world, submitted everyone. But then still even though I submitted everyone the year before, my passing wasn't good enough yet to actually pass everyone in the division, right? So, you see these guys come up really quick, but they're not really complete, and you usually see people try to find ways around it. Like to me, a common one now is like the worm guard is a good example. Guys will start playing the worm guard, and then, what they like about it is that they can sweep with it, but then when they come on top, they can maintain the worm guard grip, right? So then they can try to mount you from the sweep, right?
Okay.
Or take your back from the sweep. And then if they can't, if they can't get the mount or the sweep immediately, well, then they don't mind just getting rolled back over. They won't let go of the grip, and they still have you in the position. And they'll just keep cycling that, and they stay there the whole time. And then, then it's kind of like they never really have to address the passing, It's a whole different thing to, try to, kind of navigate around the problem, being like, example I like to use is, everyone talks about, Cobrinha versus Mendez, and, people talk about Mendez is just on another level now and stuff. It's not really. Mendez is really good. Obviously, he's got an amazing berimbolo and everything. But if the past 4 years in a row you told Mendez you're going to go on top and you have to actually try to pass Cobrinha's guard, you have to try to pass it, not jump to a berimbolo, not drop to back to your butt and then try to reset up a berimbolo. You have to try to straight up pass his guard from top. I bet the last 4 years in a row, the story would be Mendez gets omoplated. That's probably what would have happened. But he doesn't do it. And I understand why. I mean, it's a smart decision. He won the past, I don't know how many worlds for it. But, the point is just because you win in competition doesn't necessarily mean that your game is the most complete. And I think that, if you want to have jiu-jitsu that inspires people, then you need to start going on top. I mean, you don't want to explain to your friends when you show a video of your match. You don't want to explain to your friends well, you see, there because I got an advantage because when he rolled upside down, this happened. No, you want to be I went on top and passed the guy's guard and submitted him. I think that people know the right answer. They just don't want to do it because it's scary. Because you have to lose.
Yeah, you mentioned that you really have to have a guard though, and do you mean just have a guard game, or maybe a particular type of guard that you're really good at that you can go to?
One thing all guard players need to have is good recomposing. So you have to have good recomposing. Absolutely, 100%. You need to if I told you don't play any guard, just sit there with your legs up and don't grab any grips. You should be able to do that and defend very well without any grips, right? You need to get like that, right? So once you have that, your base recomposing is good. You can really make it hard for anyone to pass and everything, right? Then, and you can build both of these at the same time. But, once you have the recomposing, then you need to have one or two guards that are your good sweeping spots or your good submission spots. So, let's say you have good recomposing and then you have a good spider guard and a good De La Riva guard. That's enough. If your recomposing is good enough and you have a few attacks from those positions and you're in good shape and aggressive, you'll be able to sweep or submit most guys in your level, But the problem that I think most people have is that their guard, their defense comes from their position, and that's bad. What I mean by that is you can't pass their guard because you can't get out of their spider guard. But if you get out of their spider guard, they crumble, right?
Okay.
That's bad. You need to have good recomposing regardless of what guards you play, right? You need to be able to play with no guard and still recompose as well, because you see a lot of guys, that's why I think the lapel guard stuff, a lot of younger guys like it, and it's cool. There's a lot of cool things you can do there, but I think not all guys are like this. Certainly Keenan and the Meows have amazing guards outside of the lapel, right? But guys who do not currently have a good guard like it because they're oh my god, now I'm doing much better with this guy who was way better than me before, and I'm entangling him in the lapel. I feel really technical, but it's of course you feel good because you're locking him, you're tying your foot in a knot in his gi, and he can't pass your guard because by default that's a very tough position to pass. But what you're really doing is you're masking the fact that your base recomposing is not good. You need to have good base recomposing. So with those people, usually what happens is they tie you up in the lapel for a second, and then you get out of it somehow, and then they're done. So you don't want to be dependent on any guard. I'm not dependent on my spider guard. I'm not dependent on my De La Riva guard. My base recomposing is very good, right? And then I just happen to play spider and De La Riva a lot.
So you could always get back, or if they break your grips and you lose it, you're still going to be fine. Like you say, it's not that immediate pass.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's on the bottom. You need to pick a few, but on the top, it's different because you need to pass more than
Every
two
guard.
different types of guard.
Yeah. That's the thing that I think is the difference, And I think, I can speak from my perspective when I was coming up in the lower belts. When I was coming up in the lower belts, I always had this vision like guard players are the most technical. Guard is what it's all about, guys who are on top are just kind of like muscle heads, and, having a good guard's like where the real technique is. That's kind of like the image I had. Because, I think, and maybe the current generation doesn't have that. I don't know. But I came up just thinking like the guard was so cool, right? And I still do. I love the guard. But, once I actually started trying to pass, I was like, oh, this is actually really hard, right? And then I realized, okay, so if someone's got a good spider guard, I got to know how to pass spider guard. Right? If someone's got a good De La Riva guard, I got to know how to pass De La Riva guard. So you got to think about the difficulty for a passer going into a division, and especially at the lighter weights like feather and lightweight, everyone likes to play guard, right? So each match, the guy's going to put you in his guard, right? So, the first match, the guy plays spider guard. I have to be better at passing spider guard than he is at playing spider guard. Furthermore, he probably only plays guard, and in the gym he only plays spider guard. So if we all have the same amount of time to train, let's say each person has 100 hours to prepare for a tournament, okay? So you spend your 100 hours working your spider guard, okay?
Okay.
So you have 100 hours of spider guard experience, bottom, okay? Then the next guy, because there's 10 people in the division, the next guy plays 100 hours of De La Riva guard, okay? The next guy does 100 hours of 50-50. The next guy does 100 hours of butterfly, okay? So each of my opponents has 100 hours of whatever their guard is, right? Then I'm going to try to pass. I only have 100 hours to prepare as well, but I can't put 100 in each one. So I'm not capable of beating everyone, assuming that the time allocation is the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like you mentioned with the positional sparring. They're putting themselves there all the time. They're just working on that. They're getting amazing results with that. Yeah. And you got to walk in and beat them at their own game in a variety of games. Not everybody's playing the same guard.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's you have to beat them at a variety of positions because you're not facing one opponent, you're facing multiple opponents because you're trying to win the tournament, right? And all they have, it's much harder for the top guy because the bottom guy, it is much easier to entangle you and sweep. Assuming the guys all have like decent base recomposing, it's much easier to entangle you and sweep or get an advantage than it is to actually secure a full pass, right? So it's just like the physical labor is on you on top, right? They have to entangle you, lock you up, and just kind of wait, and then try to sweep you at the last second. You have to really unlock those positions. And that's really difficult, So the top guys, I feel like, don't get enough credit.
So I know you're a guy who studies a lot. What do the guys who get the results from passing guards? What do they do differently than the average grappler who passes at a good level, but is not doing the same thing that the top level guys are?
It's probably different for the people, like, about how they approach it. Like I would say, like, maybe the way Leandro's training, what has led him to his success is not necessarily the same that's led Lucas to his success in Rodolfo. Like, maybe they have different perspectives.
Yeah.
But I can say objectively how I approach passing, and I think it describes what everyone does effectively. And the answer is you have to have an answer for every position, right? People, like, I think there's this idea that, like, when you pass or when you do jiu-jitsu in general, it's like you play your game, not their game, right? People love that. It sounds cool. You don't, when you're passing, don't let them play their guard. You force them to deal with your passing, right? But it's a fairy tale. It's so much easier for the person on bottom to entangle you than it is to pass. Think about it. Like, for the person to set up a lasso, all they have to do is grab your sleeve and loop their foot. Right? For you to pass, you have to get around their legs and lock their hip down. That is a much bigger task than for them to just lasso you, right?
Yeah.
So, or the lapel guard, even worse, right? All they got to do is get your lapel, right, and put their foot on your lapel, right? It's an easy goal. It's like trying to fight them, but they can't touch you. Of course they're going to touch you. So the expectation that you're never going to let them get the grip they want is just a pipe dream. They're going to get the grip they want. Even if, let's say 60% of the time you never let them get the grip they want. Well, in a tournament, if you have more than 3 matches, they're going to get the grip they want. It's going to happen. It's just going to happen. So to imagine that you're going to avoid it ever happening is just not true. Even if you can do it most of the time, you're still going to happen sometimes, and you have to be prepared for it. So, to me, the guys who pass well have an effective answer for every situation, right? And honestly, I didn't have any improvement in my passing until I started taking it that way. Like, literally, if you sit and talk to me about passing, and I know Lucas and Leandro are the same way when you talk to those guys, I can't speak specifically for them, but I know for me, if you come to me and you ask me, okay, how do you pass De La Riva guard? Like, I can't even answer that question. I'll say, okay, well, what grips does he have? And then you'll be like, he's holding the ankle. I'm like, is he holding the ankle or is he holding the pants? And you'll be like, he's holding the pants. I'm like, what is his free hand doing? Is he holding my sleeve or is he holding my collar? Or which sleeve is he holding? Okay, he's holding this collar. Is it this collar or this collar? Okay. And I have an answer for every single variation, right? Now, sometimes the answer for 2 situations, like say he grabs my collar, maybe my answer for each one is the same, right? Because the same answer works. But very often it's different, right? Like if I'm in De La Riva and the guy grabs the cross sleeve, or like the same hand as the one that's on the De La Riva side, then I have to do a different pass than if he grabs the sleeve of the side of the non-De La Riva leg. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. How much of your sometimes when if I'm put in a guard, basically the only guard I could really try to avoid is like the closed guard. I got pretty good warning for that. But
I'm not saying you shouldn't ever strive to avoid getting put in their positions, but you want to certainly be prepared for it.
Yeah. But how much of it is, if I end up getting confused by what somebody's doing, it seems like for me, if I'm confused, I try to just start over, break some grips and start back to where I was,
absolutely.
and re-engage.
And that's a valid solution. So to explain to you how I view jiu-jitsu, okay, I just view jiu-jitsu as a sequence of mini games, okay? So use closed guard for an example. Opening closed guard could be a sport. It would be boring, but it could be a sport. Okay? You can make a sport. The guy on bottom wins if he keeps his guard closed for 2 minutes. The guy on top wins if he unlocks the legs. Okay, it'd be boring, but you could make that a sport, right? Yeah. So you could be a world champion in that sport, but then be terrible at the sport of getting out of spider guard, right? Everything in jiu-jitsu is a sport. Every little mini position is a sport with its own sets of wins and losses. So in De La Riva, you could, meaning he's holding my ankle, you could define the win for you if you're on top to be if I pass his guard or if I just get out of the position. That's a win for me. Okay? And then a loss would be if I get sweep or submitted. Or if he upgrades position. Say he switches to X guard, for example, right? So you could hyper train De La Riva, and we start there, and I say, okay, if you sweep me, submit me, or switch to X guard, which is an improvement in position, then we stop, right? And you won, right? And if I get out of the position, completely out of De La Riva, disengaged, or I pass your guard, then I win. Or if I get to half guard, with you locked down, right? Then that's in it. I've successfully improved my position, right? And you can hyper train that. And again, that could be its own sport. And you could be amazing at that, but still shitty at something else, right? So, I could be, capable of passing, a world-class black belt spider guard, but then be also capable of getting submitted by a blue belt's closed guard. You see what I mean?
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, people often, I find, are looking for these, broad, esoteric solutions for their passing, and I often see it where people will teach in these principles, and it sounds good, and I don't mean to be negative about it, but usually principles don't help anything. People will say stuff like always keep your elbows tight, or always have your posture, or always control this way, but that's just not true. There's plenty of times I fight and my head is down and I have no posture. Plenty of times when I fight, I have my arms completely straight driving into the guy, and my elbows are not tight. So when you tell a new person something like keep your base, keep your elbows tight, it doesn't help them in any way, because depending on the position they're in, the answers are different, right? There's situations that you want your elbows completely straight and not tight at all, right? When I'm in spider guard, my arms are always straight as a board. I never suck my elbows in tight in spider guard. Or in De La Hiva guard, the guy has my collar, I don't break the grip. I let him kill my posture and then I knee cut. It just depends, Other people may deal with the situation differently. So to me, the general principles don't ever help. Well, the only thing that helps is addressing positions on a micro position level. From there, you can build any game you want. Your answers may be different, but you have to have an answer for the position. So how you get out of De La Hiva, maybe you break the grip and then try to repass, or maybe you pass, but a different pass than I do, but you have to have an answer for De La Hiva. When that push position is put on you, you're going to have an answer. Whether you know it or not, you do have an answer.
So how many, it sounds like you might need a different pass for every guard, or can you kind of funnel these back into to your pass and maybe only have to have 2 or 3 passes that work well for you, and you could eventually get to them from each type of guard?
I would say the answer is like somewhere in between.
Okay.
And it depends on what your definition of a pass is. For example, like the Toreando is very similar looking to like a leg drag, right?
Yeah.
But so it's just kind of like confusing where it's like, if I'm in De La Hiva, like he's holding my ankle, and I control both pants and I shoot the legs across, kind of like Leandro does. That's the same thing as a Toreando, but he's holding my ankle, right? So would you classify that as a different pass, or would you classify one as a leg drag and one as a Toreando? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And as you get better at the passes, you see them. I think it's like if you get better at Kimura, you see them all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, what I find, the 2 passes I use by far the most, I mean, really, like when you watch high-level passes, usually I use like 2 passes. But it's just, they come from different angles. So like, I never think in terms of I want to do this pass.
Yeah.
I always think in terms of where am I? What do I do? So to run you through a match.
Well, that was a great article by Jonathan Thomas. We really appreciate him coming on for the second time. And don't forget, he's here next week, so don't miss that. Like I told you last week, I was really excited about his conditioning part. And it's just kind of, a little different than you hear most of the time about trying to increase his baseline aerobic conditioning. I thought, that stuff is really neat. It's
not just about going, as hard. If you're doing a 6-minute round, it's not about going 6 minutes as hard as you can and trying to get that to be better. It's about being able to do that 6 minutes and not feel exhausted at the end of it. And you do that by increasing your baseline aerobic conditioning. And it was really interesting. The conversation transitioned over to guard, to playing guard, which he was a guard player all the way up until brown belt, or during brown belt too. And then his ideas about passing and how much different it is. He would think of jiu-jitsu as a guard game. Jiu-jitsu is about the guard. But once he started to pass the guard, you got to pass all kinds of guards to be a guard passer. I could have a really good half guard pass. I love it when guys put me half guard. I would have smashed right through it and passed it, which is not the case. Gary knows this, but
Byron's donkey guard is really tough to pass.
When somebody puts me into spider guard, I have to know how to pass spider guard. That's important. Butterfly guard, I got to pass it. Worm guard, I got to figure out what to do. So, I mean, as a guard player, you have to be good at your guard and have a way to get to that guard. As a guard passer, you've got to deal with everybody else's game where they're spending so much more time, and at least get that to a position where you're comfortable and you can start to pass. So it's a big difference in idea of who gets to do what first, and amount of time you're able to spend training each position is it's important. So I really like the way he explained that to us, and I think that was a lot of value in just approaching it. That's why I think some people have a lot of hard time passing the guard, especially in the first few years. It's so hard to pass guards because everybody's playing something different, and you have to figure out how to pass each individual guard as they're already good at it. So. Hang in there, you top guys and gals, and keep working, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, definitely a great article or great interview. Stay tuned next week because we're going to have part 2. So you think you learned a lot today? wait till next week comes. You'll learn even more.
Yeah.
But definitely check us out. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher Radio. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. So check us out on all those places. And give us a shout out. So we appreciate it. Our email is bjjbrick@gmail.com, or you can always send us messages on our Facebook page, which is what we check the most.
Yes, we do. And you mentioned Stitcher Radio. Gary, I want to blow your mind here. Somebody could be listening to us on Stitcher Radio in their vehicle right now.
Now that's crazy.
Now, just for this reason, I have never put a car honk sound in an episode because that drives me nuts. We have some commercials here.
Don't you hate that when you're driving your car and you hear a car honk sound and you think you did something wrong or somebody's honking at you?
Yeah, I fully expect somebody to be, showing old Byron the finger here, or some old guy lifting up his shirt and showing me the business or something. But but no,
if you've listened to us a long time, you'll remember the funny stories about Byron's previous car. That would just honk out of the blue.
That's so funny. I forgot about that. We was telling us those.
Not me.
But so I'm not going to put in car honk sounds. I'm not going to put in the car crash sounds. No sirens. If you hear that and you're driving, it's real, my friends. Drive carefully. So that's just a little side note on the Stitcher Radio listeners. Or if you like to listen to your pod or your Android or whatever while you're driving on the road, be careful. We already mentioned before, if you want to show us support and wear our gi patch, easiest way is go to iTunes and write us a review. Send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com, and we will be happy to mail out a free gi patch for giving us your thoughts about in a review if you live in the United States. So that's going pretty good. We still have some gi patches left.
Yes, we do, and we want to give them away. And it's very important to us to give them away. Here lately, we've been doing a question of the week, and we encourage people to go to our Facebook page and answer it. Previous weeks, we've had how much do you bench press, and we got a couple answers on that. But this week, since we talked about gis today, we would like to know how many gis do you own. So go onto our Facebook page and just let us know. I think that'd be kind of neat.
Yep. I'll answer the question for myself. I have 3 gis in my closet, and I have a 4th that I use as a loaner gi that I have an extra white belt with. And my buddy Armand he's got that at his house right now. So letting a guy try out the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I got a gi for him to try for a little while until he figures out if he wants to have the gi or not. And I've got an extra white belt laying around the house. It's always handy. So I technically have 4 gis, and I have 3 in my possession. So.
Well, I will go. Well, I have 3, but they don't get used very often. So.
Why? Why is it? What is this, Gary?
I'm mostly a no-gi guy, so probably 99.9% here now. But I still put the gi on every now and then, so it's always good to put it on.
Yeah. It sounds weird that one of our hosts doesn't train with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he does a ton of no-gi Jiu-Jitsu. So it's like. And
I have trained many years.
Oh, absolutely.
So I do respect. I do know. I do think the gi game is tremendous.
It just sounds funny. But
I'm going to get kicked off the show next week.
No, I don't think so. I'd have done it a long time ago, or we would have figured this out. But very few people have dedicated the amount of time on the mat here, and I don't know a better ambassador locally than Gary. So I was happy to try to connect with him and get him on the show on a regular basis. So. Gary loves his jiu-jitsu, but he just doesn't want to put the gi on all that often. He does he's always underhooking and overhooking, and he's not real big into the gi chokes. So, I don't know. I try to get him to put that gi on occasionally, and sometimes he does, and seems to have fun with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're getting off topic here. Gary, everybody wants to know not about your gi status. That's whatever, man. I mean, as long as you're training, we're happy,
Yeah, that's what counts.
Everybody wants to know about your next ebook.
My next ebook. Byron, why don't you tell everybody the title and surprise me too?
Okay. It's called Paperclips and Hairspray, but that doesn't give you much to work with. The subtitle is How I Outwitted MacGyver.
This is one of my favorite ebooks right here. Paperclips and Hairspray. And I have to tell you once that, once I was overseas and people from kidnapped me, and they were going to put me in this dungeon and torture me, where rich people were going to pay money to be able to torture me. I guess it's something to they said they were going to have me in extra as a movie called Hostel I was going to be in.
Oh, don't be that.
But so what they did is they had my hands tied and they kept me in this room. But, the crazy thing is I happen to have a paperclip underneath my tongue. Don't ask me how I got there, but I happen to have one.
Always.
Yeah, so, they put me in that room, and there was a bunch of, saws and knives and, mechanical equipment around. And so I used the paperclip, and I was going to, open the handcuffs and get out. But the problem is the handcuffs were kind of rusty, and it was hard to get it in there, but they happened to have some hairspray lying around. I don't know why, but so I sprayed the hairspray on the edge of the paperclip to make it give it a little lubrication. And basically, I freed myself. And then when they opened the door to come in to torture me for money, I was gone. So I did outwit the people who were the bad guys.
And then how it's called, how you got rid of MacGyver, these same people, I think they killed MacGyver. I hate to say it.
That's why the show's not on anymore.
Yeah. So
he was in the next pen next to me.
If they would have only captured you before they captured MacGyver, you would have taken care of him. But they got MacGyver first, got him checked off the list, and then they came after you, and that was their downfall.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I just took care of myself and made sure I got out of there. I know I've watched enough of these movies that the longer you stay in there and try to open some of these other cages to let people out, the more chance you have of getting caught.
Gary, you mentioned that you use the hairspray as a lubricant. I don't own hairspray myself, but do you own any hairspray?
I do not, Byron.
Okay, yeah.
You have not seen my hair in a while either. I don't have much, so hairspray would not do any good for me.
I don't know how. I think it must have helped jar some of the things loose in there, maybe, but it's not much of a lubricant, I would imagine. But maybe the kind that they left around was. I mean, obviously it worked.
Well, to be honest, really what happened was I was thinking of WD-40 and paper clips, and then I realized, when it was hairspray, right when I was getting ready to say it, I was like, well, this isn't really going to work. I don't have a backup plan, so I had to just roll with it.
There you go. That's how Gary does it there.
Yep, yeah, just like MacGyver. Thank
goodness they just left that laying around, and I'm glad you got out of there with very little actual damage to your body and whatnot. I mean, there's clearly those things that we've all seen, but that's...
Speaking of the movie Hostel that we just talked about, they should make it like a jiu-jitsu hostel. You go in there and you put heel hooks on the guy and arm bars and guillotine chokes. I think that would be a kind of a top quality movie. I think a lot of people would watch it.
I've never seen the Hostel movies, and I don't like to watch those times in a match or in an MMA fight where it goes to breaking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just so hard to watch.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's man, obviously I've seen more than a few of them, but it's kind of hard to watch those. And people post them on Facebook. Oh, check this out! The guy breaks his arm.
Man, I never click on those links when somebody tells you to check it out.
Gary,
it's the last thing I want to see.
There you go. I guess. Well, good job censoring yourself from that sort of thing. I hate the ones worse that it's just a freak accident. The guy just is walking or running and his leg just snaps.
It happens.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Gary, I'm excited about your ebook, paper clips, and WD-40. How I Outwitted MacGyver.
Yeah, you should have used WD-40 in the original title.
Yeah,
it would have worked better. Okay,
we'll change it. We'll get out. Your publicist must have screwed that up. I'm sure that guy's an idiot.
Yeah, so, I think it's Byron.
That guy can't do nothing right. So we will get that book published as soon as possible, and it will be... Where will they be able to find this book?
Well, they'll be able to find it at www.bjjbrick.com.
There you go. Or you can go to any bookstore and just ask for it by name. They'll know.
And watch them start laughing at you.
They'll know. Have somebody type it into the computer, film it, and send it to us, my friends, and we will love it.
We'll send you a gi patch if you can find it.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, next week, as promised, we've got the other half of the interview with Jonathan Thomas. It's going to be a lot of great information. We get to talking about his travels and what happens with that and tons more jiu-jitsu. So we'll be happy to catch you next week. And don't forget to stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.